Step 1. Buy a Mac from a used marketplace such as eBay or Facebook as cheaply as you can. Step 2. Give it a good clean, make sure any faults have been fixed, and perform some cheap upgrades. Step 3. List it online and sell it for $50 more than you bought it for. Step 4. Repeat the process and profit. This is the idea behind flipping used Macs for some relatively easy cash. I spent a couple of years doing this as a side job when I was younger, between 2020 and 2022. So today I'll talk about whether that's a good thing for you to try in 2023. First, let's look at availability. Old Macs are in no short supply. You want to look at listings on eBay regularly, as it's easy to organise shipping direct to your door for these. Not just any eBay listings though, it's best to search for a blanket term, MacBook for example, and then, most importantly, sort by ending soonest. If you see a good price and it stays low up to a few minutes before ending, you want to put in a maximum bid and leave it there. eBay is still a great option in some respects because they offer a solid money-back guarantee most of the time, in case you're sent something you didn't order. Facebook is definitely next best to try, as you'll find a lot of listings from people who really have no idea how much their old computer is worth. If you don't like the price you see, send an offer for 20 or even 10% off, and fingers crossed you'll grab a bargain. Facebook is notorious for containing scam artists though. The only advice I can give is never ever get anything delivered. Meet the seller in public, and if you can, arrange a bank transfer or PayPal. Carrying cash isn't the safest, no matter where you live. Facebook Marketplace has been full of scammers since day zero. Buying Macs off there is still viable in 2023, but bear in mind you need to be in a place where a lot of people are going to be selling things. Like a medium to large city. Unless you're confident buying and selling devices purely online, or are happy driving a long way for stuff, I really wouldn't recommend flipping Macs living in a remote area. Other than that, the current state of availability is great though, which is good if you want to start selling now, right? So what's a drawback to this Mac flipping idea in 2023? Reduced upgradability. To cut a long story short, Macs newer than 2015 are very difficult and pricey to upgrade compared to their older counterparts. And as I mentioned earlier, adding some cheap upgrades is among the best ways to make more money selling each Mac. An example of this is how I used to buy a MacBook Pro 2012 15-inch with a dead screen and hard drive in 2021 for peanuts, let's say $80. I'd replace the screen with another used one for $50, buy a 256GB SATA SSD for $20, and my total cost would be $150. I would sell these without fail for above $250 every time. That's a license to print money for anyone interested in Macs, right? Well yeah, it was perfect. But because of Apple Silicon, and obviously age, it's very hard to sell any 10-year-old Mac for much these days. So in 2023, you'd buy something a couple of years newer to flip, like a 2015 13-inch MacBook Pro. These were very popular, as viewers of my channel will know. The problem with this plan is that replacing the screen on a 2015 costs at minimum 120 of your currency of choice. A broken screen MacBook Pro 2015 could go for 80ish if you're lucky. Factor in buying an SSD for it, which is roughly $25 thanks to Apple switching to proprietary parts now. That's $225. MacBook Pro 2015 13 inches can often sell for below $225, so you're really going to struggle even breaking even. This is only going to get worse, I'm afraid, as Touch Bar Macs, for example, have most of their parts straight up soldered to the motherboard. You either buy a working one or you learn micro-soldering, I guess? Anyway, that overall problem is one of the reasons I don't consider flipping Macs as viable these days. So 2023 is the third year of Apple Silicon Macs. How does this affect flipping Macs? Well, any Intel-based Mac is in the process of dropping fast in value. As we all know, they're far inferior in performance compared even to M1, and Intel Macs are only going to have any form of new software support for a couple more years tops. So if you buy a 2018 MacBook, for example, you'll have to sell it as soon as you can, as within a few months the price you get will be lower. What we can take from this is that Apple Silicon Macs from 2020 onwards are more worth buying to sell. The problem here is that they're expensive. You'll be hard pushed to find a MacBook with M1 for below $600 in the UK. If you're selling MacBooks on for profit, you want to be able to sell about once a week in order to drive any meaningful amounts home. Let's say you buy 3 or 4 to get started in the business. That's a £2,000 to £3,000 hole in your pocket, just as a buy-in. I guess this isn't going to be a problem forever, as Apple Silicon laptops will begin to age, just like any others, and come down in price. but that does force your hand a bit into waiting, making 2023 a not great year to start Mac flipping. So lastly, if you do give it a try, I might as well give you my best tips, since I'm not exactly in the business anymore. I ended up making about 1.5k in profit in the 2 years I sold Macs, but it took up too much of my time to be worth it. You should prioritize getting the closest and most convenient Mac sales, unless you want to really put a lot of your own time into this plan. On a similar note, I quickly figured out that buying iMacs or other desktop machines wasn't a great way to utilize space. Carrying something like that home can be taxing, and it's going to take up a lot of space once it gets there. Not to mention, if you want to ship it to someone to sell it, that's going to be a pretty expensive package. Yup, MacBooks alone make a pretty good product to work with, and if I were you, I'd aim to keep to that niche of the market. Another tip I'd suggest is buying things you know you're going to need for these in bulk, so you pay less. These could be things like SSDs for the older Macs, or even the little rubber feet which all MacBooks inevitably lose at some point. eBay is good for this kind of thing. Keep an eye out for people selling job lots. You're undoubtedly going to need a tool bag with all the tools you most often need for opening up Macs. To name a few, you'll want to get a small set of Torx screwdrivers, a P5 pentalobe screwdriver, and obviously some small Phillips head and a couple of spudgers for prying away ribbon cables, for example. One last tip, if you do get good at repairing these things to sell, why not start charging people for you to fix their machines? You might as well mention to anyone you come across in your business that you're also a fairly skilled repair technician. You'd be surprised about how many people might reach out for help, and every little instance of business helps spread the word. This whole video has been a bit off topic for my YouTube channel, to be honest, but I thought it might be interesting to share some insight, I guess. If you liked the video, liking and subscribing is appreciated, or even a super thanks donation if you're a massive fan of the channel. If you didn't like it though, let me know and I'll steer clear of this kind of content in the future. Alright, thanks for watching and I'll see you next week.